sponsored by the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. I am one of your hosts, Rebecca Whiting, and I have with me today TJ Hawthorne and Dan McKnight from the Bring Your Troops Home. And actually, he just popped in the studio. We also have TC from the Black Robe Regiment podcast. So we were going to talk about so we had a rally this last weekend for Defend the Guard movement. And so we're just going to talk about it and see what TJ and TC, you were both there in person, as was I. So what did you guys think?
I thought TC knocked it out of the park. MCing the event. He is I really dug his style, and I got to speak some of the words. I didn't speak any of the words that I wrote down on the paper. Really not many at all. What I wrote down, I really just got up there and spoke how I feel, and it really does bring out a lot of emotion, man, for all of us. So it was important, and I'm glad we got some good numbers. And on the streams, we didn't get very good numbers live, but I think this is the movement. That's why they call it a movement, where everybody I talk to keeps saying, yes, it's a no-brainer. It makes sense. Why would we deploy National Guard troops if we haven't declared war? And everybody realizes that we haven't declared war in so long. So, but anyways, we're going back to what happened Saturday. I had a great time, and I really did like TC. I really appreciate you doing that for us, and for you too. You did a great job.
Yeah. How did you feel about it overall, TC? Oh no.
I caught about a third of that. I don't know what's going on my end. So I just thought maybe TJ was having a seizure.
That could have been too.
So how did you think about the whole
I was
low points.
I was humbled to be part of it. I'm not worthy to carry, and Saturday, I'm not worthy to carry the water of the I'm done. Lost it again. I don't know what's going on.
We can still hear you.
We can actually hear you, TC. We can hear you.
Oh.
It keeps telling me I've lost connection. I don't know what it is about Restream. Restream does not like me.
The deep state.
Yeah. I think we might have a lot of people watching right now, so they're saying, "Hey, we need."
You guys just keep talking, and I'll sit here when I'll talk when I catch up.
Well, Dan, sure. TC emceed the event. He did read the clip that you did send, and that really touched my heart as well, man. I'm really proud of what you do for this. This is ever since I've learned of what this was, it's been my main objective. So say something before I lose it.
Well, I got to tell you, I attend as many Defend the Guard rallies as I can. Anywhere in the country, I try to go to them. This one just didn't work out logistically where I could be there, and it's the one that I kind of wish I would have been at the most. It was absolutely the most impactful presentation with words and the spectrum of people that you had that participated. The things that were spoken, and Rebecca, your speech was absolute fire. And we're kind of burying the lead here real quick. And so I want to kick it back to that before I even give any more comments. You announced that you are running for United States Senate against Amy Klobuchar, who some would consider a dove in Congress, but in reality, she's just like everybody else in the Uniparty, where she talks out one side of her mouth and then she speaks out of the other. But your announcement, your speech, your emotions, the things that you shared were the reason why I do what I do. And every single person that spoke was on point. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the effort. And I want to share this thing far and wide and build off the momentum, because it was impactful. And it blew out of the water what you guys did in Minnesota a couple years ago, even though you had some celebrities a couple years ago. This was better. This was from the heart. This shows that Defend the Guard is more powerful with the people than it is with the establishment. And I can't applaud you enough. So thank you.
So one of the things that we worked on was to really reach out to other, groups that we probably disagreed on a lot politically, socially, but this was the thing that we could agree on and decided to work together. So we had four different groups, technically, to some degree. We had us, the Libertarian Party of Minnesota. We had the Constitutional Republic Party, which is a political party in Minnesota that's just kind of really in its infancy. And then there was the movement
for People's Democracy.
Yes. Yeah, Movement of a People's Democracy. And then we did have a couple of people from the GOP show up too. We had two.
And noticeably absent, unfortunately, was the Democratic Farmers Party, right? Which it's noticeable and it speaks louder than words. The old anti-war party of the left seems to be disinterested in actual anti-war. I was ashamed. I was hurt. But you know what? It delineated the battlefield for us. We now know where we have to fight.
Yeah. The Democrats can't pretend that they are anti-war. They just, because they're not. And I mean, with whether it be Ukraine and Russia right now or Israel and Palestine, whatever it is. I mean, but they just, wherever the conflict is, they just keep voting to fund it, and they just.
Well, they really think we have short memories. They really do believe, and I think it's true. Most Americans do have this short memory that we don't remember in 2019 or 28. I don't know when it was. McCain was still alive. McCain and Klobuchar over there in Ukraine before any of this stuff was even close to happening, right? Building it up to say this is what we do. And I don't know whether they just dip their toes in the water to go over there to show this stuff to see if they can get support from their people that think they're real. I don't know. I don't get it, but they're saying the quiet part out loud. They don't hide it. They really aren't ashamed. And I feel like it's where it's our job to then educate these folks in our communities that she's nonsense. This stuff is nonsense, and that the wars, what are we really doing? You have to give me some kind of plausible reason. And I have not heard any of that. And I won't.
TJ, you're absolutely right. There's no one that's so naive as to think that in order for our country to survive, there are occasionally wars of merit, things that are worthy of going to battle for. But every time we raise arms, we threaten the lives of individuals, of people, and we're willing to send our sons and daughters into battle, we should do it with the express consent of the citizens. And the only way that happens is a declaration of war from Congress. Our representatives, we gave them our authority to declare war, and they just don't do it anymore. They've abdicated that responsibility, and they've given it to the president, whether it's Bush or Obama or heaven forbid if it would have been Romney or McCain. Oh dear God, we'd be in war nonstop. And we've got to reclaim that authority. And the only way we can do it is with the power from the states, with our lever of influence, which is the 10th Amendment, because any power not expressly given to the federal government in writing in the Constitution belongs to the states and the people. And we have to lean on that. That's the only thing that we have as common individuals is we have the rules.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
The rules that are supposed to restrain them.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why I feel like, as much as I'd like to be on my city council or whatever as a politician, I do want to be in that state house to push this. It's amazing that nobody was there. The one senator, and I really forgot his name. It was Nate or Jake. I forgot.
Nathan Wiesenberg.
Yeah. Yep. And it's just, I don't understand how they can't. Don't you think you would get all kinds of folks to get behind you? You were already there. This seems like a no-brainer. So there's something else that is stopping these folks, because the state legislatures, they should be totally behind this.
Oh, it's easy. It's money. I mean, they have them paid off. That's what happens.
Let me tell you,
whatever principles they think they stand on, by the time they get into these positions and people start coming to them, they're like, hey, we just need you to vote this way. These people are too weak to be able to withstand the pressures of being in political office and be able to maintain their principles. By getting there, they have to compromise their principles.
absolutely. Absolutely. And then our first rally we ever had in a state house was in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And Rand Paul flew out there to participate in it. He supported Defend the Guard, but more importantly, he wanted to stick a knife in the heart of Liz Cheney. And so he flew out to Wyoming with us. And the legislature was in session. It was a budget year. And the whole rotunda was filled with legislators listening to the rally. It was very motivating and inspiring. And then they turned around and went right back into session 10 minutes later and voted to kill the bill. Literally. We support the troops. We tie yellow ribbons around the trees. We give them free fajitas on Veterans Day. You know, take my place in line at the coffee shop. Well, if you really want to honor veterans, let's stop making them come home from combat with mental scars and emotional scars, and God forbid, inside of a flag-draped pine box. That's how we honor veterans, is to stop asking them to do something that our congressmen are not willing to at least put their name on the line for. Ridiculous. And we should realign our values as a society, and understand that war is not some glorified video game. It's not a Tom Hanks movie. War is real, and war is hell. And Rebecca, your words were so powerful. I don't know how anybody in your Capitol building will ever be able to ignore them.
Well, they just don't listen. So yeah, this next time around, so that happened on Saturday. By Sunday, I was like, all right, we need to just go ahead and start planning the rally for next year, because they're not even going to let the legislation go into session. They're not, or committee. They're not even going to let that go forward, right? So we're just going to go ahead and start planning the rally for next year. And then I was thinking about it, all of those people that should have been there, that should have made this a priority. Like, I hate it when people come to me and they're like, oh, thank you for your service. Like, for what? I mean, that's such a complicated issue for me. But next time around, there's going to be handwritten letters delivered to every single one of those people, so that they cannot say that they didn't know that this was happening. That's what's going to happen. Go to every single one of them and be like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're doing. This is important. Here you go. This is time, place, just be there. All you got to do is be there and listen.
Well, while your rally was happening in Minnesota, I was at the Idaho Libertarian Party State Convention. I was delivering their keynote, and one candidate for president was there, Chase
Oliver,
thank you. And I got a chance to speak with him. Very much obviously supports Defend the Guard. The Libertarian Party of the state of Idaho, while I was there, officially endorsed it in resolution form. They made a financial contribution, which I'm humbled by. I would never ask for contributions from a party that is so starved for resources, but they chipped in and kicked some money up so that we could hire more activists to make phone calls and do those types of things. But where the Libertarian Party has come to bat for maybe the first time in my lifetime is they showed up on Activism Day when we needed people to make phone calls and to call constituents and to call state houses. The Mises Caucus and the classical liberals of the Libertarian Party came together for the first time since your party divided. And they worked together to make phone calls. And they were the army. They were the army that helped us flip the Senate in Arizona. They were the army that helped us win the New Hampshire House just a couple months ago. It was the members of the Libertarian Party that showed up, and I don't mean this to be an insult, for the most effective libertarian effort in my lifetime. Defend the Guard has become that banner for the LP, and I don't know what it is about it, if it speaks to their soul, or maybe there's new leadership, or is it something that Angela's doing on the national stage, or is it because Scott Horton's involved? I don't know what it is, but it's become this thing where principled libertarians from both the classical liberal and the Mises Caucus can come together and stop fighting over the color of someone's hair or the sexual preference of some of their members. And they're fighting for the one thing we all agree with, liberty.
Right.
And then from time to time, together, we have to water that tree of liberty. And we have to do it with the blood of tyrants and the blood of patriots. and they've got skin in the game for the first time in a long time. And God, it's awesome to watch.
You know, and I don't know a single veteran that if like something else were to happen, that none of us would just sit it out. Like if something were to happen that was, you know, like legitimate and on our soil, like these are the people that would be first to go back in.
Absolutely.
And that, I think that that's really like the crux of the issue, right? For Iraq, Afghanistan, for those, wars, you know, because that's literally like what it was. Like we didn't get a congressional, you know, declaration of war, but they were wars. Like we were fighting. But you know, the people that were there not because they wanted to be fighting in Iraq or Afghanistan, but because they were willing to go to and do whatever it was to protect our country. And our country and the government decided to use that improperly. But all of those people, that's where the heart of the issue is. Like that was the basis of joining in the first place. Like even if you don't realize that that's what you're doing when you know, swear your oath and you join the military, but really quickly when you get in, you realize that there's like this larger, you know, force at play, and then you have the camaraderie of your people around you, and you become loyal to one another. Like you would go to the ends of the earth for those people, and those people are the United States. So
yeah, we used to always say we go to war for our country, but we come home for our brothers, and not just one of them, all of them. And you're right. There's not a patriot. There's not a person in this movement that if there was an actual physical threat to our country that wouldn't be there first to sign up. There are some, you know, there's pacifists and there's people that are conscientious objectors, and I respect their opinion. But you look at our movement, most of us are still in fairly good shape. We still maintain military haircuts, and we still get up and do some PT in the morning. But guess what? TC's got it. It's almost out of regulation because there's no fade, but that's okay. We'll forgive him. But
there's not much of anything left, though.
Exactly. But we might grow a beard, right? But there's a reason why we have wise and prudent control of our military by civilians, right? Because when we're 18 and we're young and we put that uniform on, what do we want more than anything? We want to get in the fight. We want to go live out that dream of Call of Duty. You know, we want to go out and we want to take the fight to the enemy. We want to beat those damn Russians and commies. And it's important that we have wise and prudent people in our state legislature and in the federal government to just pump the brakes and say, hold on, before we go to war, have we tried diplomacy? Have we tried all the tools in the toolbox? Have we had a debate and a discussion with the representatives of the people? And do we have their express intent or their expressed approval? And if we do, let's vote. And Ron Paul, bless his heart, tried to take a declaration of war to Congress in 2003. He said, if we're going to go to Iraq, we should do it the right way. Here's a declaration of war. I will push it forward. Me, Ron Paul. And we all know how we would have voted on it. He would have voted no, but he would have done it the right way. And they laughed him out of Congress. They wouldn't even take it up for a vote. And so it shows you just how out of touch our Congress is. They're beholden to all of those steel and glass buildings that surround the Capitol Mall. They're all filled by defense contractors. And there's nothing that they wouldn't do to feed that beast, to satiate that bloodthirst, that lust. And as long as we have people like Lindsey Graham and Dan Crenshaw and Mitch McConnell and just Tom Cotton, I could go down the list of Republicans, and then I would say, and all the Democrats, we will never get past that state of affairs. And that's why we don't fight in D.C. anymore. D.C. is lost.
Yeah,
they're not accountable. None of these folks are accountable to their constituents anymore. They're accountable to those donors that you just mentioned. This is the thing, is that apparently it is the money. Like I'm not sold on the fact that I need money to win my race, right? But I get these races that are the whole state or the whole nation, whatever. It is about the money and about the broadcast of the name recognition alone and some of the little talking points that are nice. Like, you know, I see Amy Klobuchar's tweets, and sure, this is a nice one that she went and spent some time at this whatever, or did some of this. And she's probably a nice lady to a lot of these folks. But damn it, this is bull crap that she's not accountable to all the human lives that are lost, not in America, because of those folks.
Here's the other thing too, is that Americans in general are soft. Like Americans have it easy. There's a lot of privilege regardless of who you are. I mean, we are not facing constant threat from other countries around us. Like, we are the big kid on the playground, you know? So like, we're not the ones that are worried about you know, somebody coming to attack us. Like, I mean, there have been incidences and like things have happened, but overall, we're not worried about losing, you know, our eastern shoreline or whatever it is. You know, we're not concerned about that. And Americans, I think that this kind of goes into the military industrial complex, really capitalizes on the violent nature of human beings, right? So like, when you have people that have never experienced like big scale violence, you don't have people that are just like, you know, we don't really need that here, because all they see of it is they see it in other places. So I think that, I don't know even what I'm trying to say, but the politicians know that. They know that people like, they like these things, and so they use that. But the people in America don't have to experience it at home, because we're doing it to other people in their countries, and they don't experience. It would be different if somebody's entire apartment complex was bombed and that they lost half their neighbors because of some, you know, overnight bombing in our country. But we don't experience that here. Exactly. People would be much more tired of war if they knew what war was, and they don't. We hardly have, what percentage of it is that's even a veteran in the United States? It's very small.
0.5, less than 0.5%.
And then even if you have joined the military, what's the percentage of people who have seen combat? It's even smaller than that.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because, you know, in your state, you guys are kind of in that Rust Belty part of the state. You're a little bit to the west of the Rust Belt, but you know, Donald Trump, when he ran for office in 2015, and love him or hate him, we're just going to talk about him because he ran on an anti-war platform, right? He ran on no new wars. And what he said is getting out of these stupid, dumb wars that don't financially make sense. I don't care if he's against war because of money or out of principle or out of the fact that we didn't go there. He's against war, and that's good enough for me, right? Yeah. And so when he was running, we had just gone to a new war. We had just started another war in Syria 2 years earlier, and Amy Klobuchar actually voted to bring an authorization of use of military force to the House floor to give Obama the authorization to go to war. Now, the House as a whole killed it. They were like, we're not even going to take it up. But she voted on it to bring it on a motion, and that motion failed. And guess what Obama did anyway? He went to war. He went to war to Syria anyway, and we've been bombing people there now for 8 years. So even Congress's willy-nilly abdication of declarations of war, which they've replaced with an authorization of use of military force, even that doesn't matter anymore. And so when Trump was president, he was evil, and they passed this overwhelming resolution that President Trump needs to have authorization from Congress before he goes to war with Iran. Well, we didn't actually go to war with Iran, but that was the Democrats and the Republicans' stance. He has to have permission before he goes to war with Iran. Where was that principled stance against Syria? Where was that principled stance for Yemen? What about when they lied, when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff lied and said we had no more troops in Yemen? And then Joe Kent, who was a decorated Green Beret, his wife was in Yemen at that time and she was killed. You know, our military is the tail that's wagging the dog. And we have to put a stop to that. The only way we can do it is to reclaim our authority, and heads have to roll, figuratively. Heads have to roll, and the only way we can do that as citizens of the United States isn't by beating them in Congress. It was one of our greatest victories when we helped defeat Cheney, but that's not going to be effective. We can't do that enough times. The only way we're going to be able to do that is to get the support in the State House by electing our friends and neighbors to positions in the legislature and shoving Defend the Guard down their throats and making them choke on their own words. That's all. The only thing we can do we have to take half of their mechanism off the battlefield.
Now that I have a connection, if I may.
Hey,
better at TC.
I went to my phone, and then all of a sudden my Wi-Fi for my computer is just like exploding. It's like, hey, you've got great connection. I'm like, When you, boy, I want to say this because I don't want to alienate. You know what? Screw it.
Go for it.
When you look at the Republicans in the state of Minnesota who have signed on to backing the Defend the Guard legislation, only one of them was there on Saturday, and that was Nate. And I'm not knocking them for signing it, but what I am saying is that kind of what Nate said in his speech, which was, sure, there are endorsing conventions going on. Sure, there are county conventions going on. Sure, there are these things going on. But you make time for what's important.
Mm-hmm.
And I look around at the Republicans and I'm like, you guys signed your names on this. Steve Drazkowski, Cal Barr, and others. You've put your names on this. Where the hell are you? Well, you couldn't send a message to your endorsing convention or show up early in the morning at your endorsing convention and make the couple-hour drive to be there to speak between 1 and 2. I mean, we would have made time for you. I mean, I rambled on to make time for Nate to show up. So
I love the message in the chat of the event. He was like, I'm on my way. I'm parking. I'm just reading it in real time. It was wonderful.
and so I'm looking and I'm like, you couldn't, like, imagine the message that sends. Imagine the message that sends to your endorsing convention, to your county convention. Hey, I really want you to endorse me, but I want you to understand how damn important this is to me that I'm going to skip the convention and trust you to endorse me because I'm the right person, because I'm going to a rally for an event, for a cause that's going to save the lives of your boys and your girls. And they couldn't be bothered because they had to go and make sure they were drumming up the votes. And I understand we don't want these guys to lose their seats if they're on our side. But here's what I'm going to do. And I just want people to hold me to this. I'm showing up in the House and at the Senate over the next year. I have friends in the House and in the Senate. And I'm going to say, hey, I'm taking a day off from work at my expense, and I'm coming up, and you're going to walk me around to every single office of every single Republican, and you're going to introduce me to the Democrats that you know on a personal level. I don't want to sit in a testimony. I don't want to sit in a hearing. I want you to take me to the offices. I want you to introduce me, and I'm going to put a Defend the Guard pamphlet in their hands. I'm going to put a pin in front of them, and I'm going to say, read this and wear this damn pin. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to show up and I'm going to say, no. And if you can't say yes right now, tell me why. Tell me why this isn't important to you.
TC, that's so important that you get them. You have to get them to explain why they don't support it, because most of them will say, I talked to the adjutant general, or I talked to the chairman of my committee. But when we went to our committee in Idaho, our House committee hearing, we just won in the Senate by an overwhelming lopsided bipartisan effort, 27-8. That's a massive victory in the Senate. It goes to the House, and there's 30 people testifying there. 30 people, half were for, half were against. All the ones testifying at for were colonels, generals, lobbyists, or they were union thugs representing the Federal Workers Union. Everybody that was for the bill was lower enlisted junior officers and family members of veterans. And the committee asked 0 questions. 0. In a committee hearing. This is a hearing where they're supposed to be discussing the topic, where they're supposed to be asking questions and clarifying statements. And they happen to have the foremost authority on Defend the Guard in the entire country. They're testifying before them. That's me. And they asked 0 questions. None. We had a 38-year veteran of the Navy. He was a naval aviator who'd been a pilot for 38 years, longest serving naval aviator in United States history. He was the guy in Top Gun named Jester that role was named after. He was that guy. He was the guy that trained pilots at Top Guns for the better part of 4 decades. And they asked him 0 questions. He was our sponsor in the House. They asked 0 questions. They had their mind made up. And right before, at the end of after all the hearing and all the testimony was done, the chairman of the committee said, okay, I guess we're at the point now where a motion would be in order. and he looks to his left and he looks to his right, and it's crickets, no motions. And I look at one of our guys who we had whipped. Prior to the hearing, we thought we were going to win in committee 14-3. We had 14 yes commitments from members of the committee. And I looked at one of them who was retiring in 2 weeks from the legislature. And are we on a PG show, or is it okay for me to speak my mind?
Okay.
We're libertarians,
I
man.
looked at him, and his name is Sage, and I mouthed at him right across the thing. I go, Sage, make a fucking motion. And he puts his head down, looks at his desk, and he grabs his microphone. And he's like, Mr. Chairman, a motion. And I'm like, okay, here we go. We're moving. And the chairman's like, okay, what's your motion? He goes, motion to send the bill to the floor with no recommendation. He couldn't even make a motion to recommend pass or failure. Just get it off my plate. Let's send it to the floor of the House. And then there was a substitute legislator that was sitting in for his son. The substitute's name is Ron Crane. He's the treasurer of the Idaho Freedom Foundation. It's one of the most right-wing, strongest conservative liberty organizations in the state, and he's the treasurer of it. And he grabs his microphone and he says, Mr. Chairman, a substitute motion. And I thought, okay, the IFF's coming to bat for us. And he goes, motion to hold the bill in committee, which kills the bill. And I looked at him, my jaw hit the ground. I'm like, the Idaho Freedom Foundation is the far right of the conservative party. They are as conservative and liberty as they come. And I just stared at him and I go, the fix is in. The fix is in. They want to leverage our bill. They are horse trading our bill right now. I didn't know what for. And so the chairman, that motion, a motion to hold a committee requires no second and no debate. It's non-debatable. They called the vote and 4 people out of 17 voted against the motion. And we would say that they voted for us, but they voted against the motion. And the rest of them voted to return the bill to the committee. Now, the bill's not dead by parliamentary procedure because holding it in the committee means the chairman can bring it back out at 50% call for it. We're getting in the weeds. It's really gross. But come to find out, our bill had so much popular support that the governor was going to horse trade our bill so that he could get a liability protection bill passed for Monsanto. That Monsanto. German Monsanto that makes magic beans and Roundup. They wanted a liability protection bill that had failed twice, and they were going to leverage our bill against it. And
meaning we'll get this bill passed and this bill.
I hope somebody put that out and put that on blast.
We're putting it on blast now. We're working on the facts and getting it all right now. But I'm telling you right here, what they did, they went to 2 senators who they thought were influential enough to switch their votes to give the Monsanto bill version 3 this year, which you're not allowed to bring bills 3 times in a session, but they were going to do it anyway. Bring version 3 to the Senate floor and let it pass. And then the deal they wanted was we move a step, Monsanto moves a step. We move a step, Monsanto moves a step. Well, we're 3 steps away from becoming a law. The Monsanto bill was 8 steps, right? It had to be introduced, had to have a hearing, had to have a floor vote, had to have transmittal, et cetera, et cetera. And in order to balance the timeline, they had to return our bill to committee to allow Monsanto to catch up. So it was 1 for 1.
I still don't like the trade-off, but I do, but I don't, right? I think it's still evil to be that pragmatic.
I believe in a non-aggression principle. And I said, is the Monsanto bill, will it hurt people? And the answer was yes. Yep. And I said, then you have to kill it. We cannot win this way. And so we killed it. Monsanto died, and some German lobbyists that were very angry that flew her on a private plane, they left even more angry. And at night, I can sleep for a minute. Even though I'm still woken up by the scars and the horrors of war, I can at least sleep knowing my conscience is clear that I didn't trade some poor migrant farm worker who's using Roundup and dying of cancer and can't sue Monsanto because of something that I did. I can live with myself.
When you get the data on that, I know you've got far bigger platforms that'll take you, but when you get the data on that, Dan, I'd love to have you on to get that out ahead of the game. And even just for the people in my audience that are local, but I mean, I got people all over the country that watch me now. I'm a big deal.
I'm honored to be here, my friend.
You have
but
61 people watching you right now, so I feel like that's pretty good numbers.
that's a good number for having me on. I'm surprised it's like not negatives, but I'd love to have you on because I think that we're going to face some of that from the Republicans in Minnesota. I've euphemistically referred to them as normicons,
You guys,
because their ideal, that and the kind of the GOP ideal is, oh well, we have to be pro-war, we have to be all for like bombing the guys in other countries so that we don't have to bomb them here, we don't have to fight them here, and so I think it's high time that people really are exposed to the reality that everything that is actually good for us, everything that's good for our republic, everything that's good for our service members, these people that they claim to basically worship. And I mean, that's really kind of what it is. They kind of act like it's this worshipful respect of these folks who are coming out of the military, coming out of combat zones. Really, the GOP mainstream doesn't give a damn about them. They just don't. They're just, and for the most part, the politicians don't either. And quite honestly, what the GOP does is they look at it and go, "Oh, the DFL's not, or the Democrats aren't signing off on this. We'll sign off on it because it's not them." And when we can hold this over them, and I'm over here going, "Well, I'm going to hold it over everyone's head." Like, if you're using this kind of legislation, in whether it be Idaho or Minnesota or Montana or whatever it might be, if you're using this kind of legislation as a bargaining chip, that says everything we need to know about your morality and your ethics.
amen.
That's all we need to know.
Exactly.
I get when you mentioned, and maybe some people don't realize like how big of a deal like sticking to your principles against something like Monsanto is like that. I just, anyways, as a small farmer, I appreciate that you did that. So thank you.
You bet. I like to say that there's people in the Idaho State House that were willing to trade their soul literally for a handful of magic Monsanto beans, and it's the story of Jack and the Beanstalk, right? They bought this bill of goods, and they believe this principle that Monsanto good because big ag lobby says it's good and big mining lobby says it's good. But I kind of live my life this way, that if the crowd says it's good, I'm going to be skeptical at best. And I tend to run away from crowds except for when I have to work them to fight them. And that's kind of my philosophy in life. But so we killed Monsanto at the expense of our own bill, and I can sleep with it at night. But now we're facing the next big lobby, and one of the members of the committee that voted against it, we got him to respond to an email from one of our activists, and he said that I voted he said I voted to hold, which means to hold the bill in committee, because Idaho can't be first. If we're first, they'll retaliate against us, and we're trying to get an F-16 package for our National Guard, and we'll lose the F-16s. He put it in writing. That dumb son of a bitch put it in writing that he wants F-16s, and that's why he voted against the Constitution. And so before the day was done, before he'd even gone home for the day, we had already have activists marching and knocking in his district. We've already sent out newsletters with copies of the email explaining that he was willing to trade the sons and daughters from this rural community who serve exponentially more than the big cities do, the rural communities do. That old Greg Lanting in his giant saggy skin suit is more interested in sending your sons and daughters off to war so that we can get a Cold War era airplane that's not even flown by active duty anymore, so that we can have a social flying club here that he was really cool and he'd be a VIP member of. And we're going to beat him. We had his opponent in studio here just the other day, and my equipment was working when that happened. And we recorded 2 hours, and we're getting ready to put that interview out. But we practice a confrontational model at Bring Our Troops Home. We practice the model of not being confrontational in tone, because confrontation is not a tone. We practice by making everything confrontational. If you vote against what we want you to vote for, you have to pay. We have to have blood, right? The scales have to be balanced. And since Representative Greg Lanting voted for F-16s, we have to take his head off. That's just the rules. and we
In
will run
Minecraft.
around the
Hell
country
yeah.
on a pike, and we will scream from the mountaintops. We did this, and maybe the next person that's on the fence will look at that empty-eyed, soulless head that we're carrying around, and they'll think, I don't want that. I'm going to vote proper. And that's what we teach. And
why
What's
would
that?
they want to be first? Who doesn't? I want to be first. I think that's the thing is, hell yeah, I'm the first effing domino that made this shit happen.
We know that when the dominoes fall, they'll fall rapidly. And
You got TJ all fired up.
What's that?
You got TJ all fired up over there. You know,
TJ's thinking about bloodless, soulless heads on pikes.
I'm just thinking about giant meat bag.
Too.
I'm snaggy giant meat bag.
I'm going to wear him like a skin suit, and there's going to be enough left over for a top hat. That's all I'm saying. I'm going to be the saggy suit, Mr. Peanut.
I'm just picturing Jabba the Hutt right now and going, oh, Solo.
And Libertarian podcast.
Well, it definitely makes. I don't think it makes sense what this trade-off shit, but it's definitely politics, right? That's what it is. It is trade-offs. I understand that, but I definitely cannot get behind that kind of trade-off at all. And really, this was the motivation that got me involved with the Libertarian Party. Dave Smith talks about it a lot. It says, hey, we can't win, maybe, right? I do believe we can, but anyways, he believes, a lot of folks, we can't win, but we're going to oppose you, and we're going to be that spoiler for your damn election if you don't support this. If you don't show me your damn principle. And you did show me your principle.
Let me tell you what
an
independent third-party candidate did to me here in Idaho. She didn't run on a Libertarian. She ran on the Constitution Party. But I had a very, very good Republican who was moderate in some of her social beliefs, but she was really, really good on fiscal things. And she represented a very blue district. It was the line between my suburbs where I live and where the inner city Boise wokeness was coming from. And so she was the line, and we had a really good candidate. We were working really hard for her, and it was going to be a close vote. We thought it would be less than 0.5% separating winner from loser. And this very principled liberty activist decided to run on the Constitution Party, and she stole 374 votes. We lost by 360. 360. That third-party candidate did exactly what you're talking about. They absolutely can play spoiler. This time it hurt me, and it hurt a good candidate because she was more focused on the whole picture instead of like maybe, I don't know, 75% of the apple. She wanted all of it. But sometimes we have to understand that progress comes in the form of a bite of an apple. And you have to push forward. You're pushing a boulder up a hill, and you can't get it there all at once. And so sometimes our principles get in the way of our practicality, and it sucks. And I want perfection as much as anybody else, but I'm not going to let good get in the way of perfect.
Yep, and that's another thing that Dave says a lot as well. I'm not trying to repeat and have a Dave Smith show here, but that's absolutely does speak to me, is that don't let good be the enemy of evil or something like that, right? Or the
No,
I think that's how it goes. But
don't let the perfect be the enemy of good.
Whichever way it makes you feel good, right?
Is. Good is always the enemy of evil. Anyways, that's how it goes, and I get it. I want to move the needle. I want to move it to more liberty because yes, here in Minnesota, it's ridiculous, and but there's not almost anything I can get behind and say yes to any of those people that are working in the Capitol here. Like almost any of them. And granted, the Republicans are quiet because they got nothing to say against all this.
Right, but that's the problem, TJ. What you're saying is like this ideal that because somehow, you know, and Dan, you probably aren't familiar with this, but in Minnesota, we refer to it as the trifecta. Right now, the political trifecta is the DFL has the House, the Senate, they have the governorship, they have all of the executive offices. There's not a single like strong Republican in the state at all. And so this idea this false ideology that because we're in the minority, we just have to be quiet and we'll raise a little bit of a ruckus here or there. Like, no, if you know you have nothing to lose, you come out swinging. You come out to that. You come out to that House floor, you come out to that Senate floor, and you come out. I don't care what the topic is. If it's a true, genuine, heartfelt topic, you come out freaking swinging. And that's why I put Nate on the spot on Saturday and, held him at the mic. Defend the Guard's not about the Second Amendment. But Nate's position on the Second Amendment the week and a half prior to the event was an issue of principle and ethics. And he stood his ground and he said to the Senate, other Republicans in the Senate, I am not going to back any legislation that infringes on the Second Amendment. That's the kind of person you need. Those are the people you want out there, for lack of better terminology, philosophically screaming at the top of their lungs, no more. You want this Gandalf type moment of none shall pass.
Yeah.
And that's, just think about that scene in the movie. If you've read the books, that's better. But if you've in the movie, everybody got this, the goosebumps or whatever you call it in your neck of the woods. And when Gandalf slammed his staff down and said, none shall pass, everybody's like, wow, that's what we need. He was outnumbered. The enemy was coming for him, and he still stood there and said it. And he held his ground.
And
that's what we need.
The benefit of us being a third party, having so few people in the state, and that's one of the things that I'm really looking forward to in this next election cycle, is that is like being able to like just take the gloves off and go out swinging. I mean, we have an uphill battle every single way, and the thing about Minnesota is because we have the trifecta of the Democrats, is that the Republicans are so weak in our state. They can't win. They're not winning. When they do win, it's in these little pockets of people. But overall, like, the state is lost to Democrats. Not a single person in the state of Minnesota who is liberty-minded can say that they are wasting their vote on a libertarian that is running for office, because they are wasting their vote on the Republicans to keep trying the same failed systems over and over and over again. And they don't win. The Republicans don't win. The state is lost. So clearly some lukewarm version of liberty is not what people want around here. They want real, they want genuine, they want an authentic. They don't want half-assed. And that's what the Republicans are giving them in this state. And that's why I just saw a video of David Nolan, who was the founder or one of the founders of the Libertarian Party, like back in the 70s, right? And he said, he had this quote, and the thing I liked about the quote, sorry, I have a 2-year-old. I'm not sure if y'all can hear him, but he's banging at my door. It's a little distracting. Anyways, he had this quote. He said that they're not voting for us when we're only giving them part of the truth. So let's just give them the entire truth. We have nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing. Like, if they don't like it, we're not losing any ground, because we have no ground. Like, the only thing that we have is to gain, right, at this point. We can't go further back.
That's exactly right. And if you look back to in history, just a couple of years, Ron Paul, when he ran for president on the Republican Party, he had more individual donors from members of the military than all other candidates combined, right? Because he spoke the entire truth. In fact, he was so popular that when they went to the RNC convention to nominate their presidential candidate, Rance Priebus, in the middle of the night, changed the rules of the RNC so that Ron Paul, his delegates, couldn't be heard, right? He cheated to give us, and that's what we ended up with the Republican Party. And TC, I wrote this in my message, and there's more to the story that I kind of like to talk about. I talk about Socrates and the gadfly, and if people don't know the gadfly story, Socrates was actually arrested. And he was brought before the jury because he didn't worship the gods that the empire worshipped, right? And he gave this amazing speech. And if you've read any of Socrates or none of him, I would recommend go and read his gadfly speech. And he talks about, I'm here to tell you the whole truth. I'm here to express everything to you. And I'm like a gadfly. And a gadfly, for those that know, it's like a horsefly, right? They bite, they sting. And he called the Athenian state, "You are a giant, lazy steed. You are a lazy, fat horse. And I have to bite you in the ass to motivate you to do anything. And I'm going to do it over and over and over again because I don't worship your gods." And this is a creed that I live by. I don't worship the gods of the Republican Party. I don't worship the military-industrial complex. I don't worship the God of endless wars, right? I don't worship the God of Northrop Grumman or the God of Raytheon. My God that I worship is between me and my actual God. And that's a personal relationship for me. So I will be that gadfly. I will continue to sting the state. I'm going to do it as often as I can. And the more I make them jump, the more I make them react, the better I'm doing at my job. And we took this mentality to Pima County, Arizona, Tucson, which was the bluest of all blue counties in the Western United States. There was no more deep blue county than Pima County. And we started with one activist during COVID. It was one of the Mothers of Liberty that went to the school board and tried to appeal to get her kid not have to follow all the COVID restrictions. And we identified her as a warrior. We started building with her and training her and bringing her friends to our political leadership training schools that we teach. And from 2020 till today, we've taken both state representative seats. We've taken the state senator seat. We've taken the board of county commissioners. We've taken half of the city council. And we've taken 2 of the 3 school boards in Pima County. So when you say Republicans or conservatives or libertarians or liberty activists can't win against the state, it's complete bullshit. I'm sorry, I don't mean to say that what you're saying is bullshit, but it starts with a seed, a mustard seed of faith. And then you apply fertilizer and let me be that fertilizer. Let my organization come in and train and motivate and give you the tools and teach you how to be confrontational in action, not in tone. And we'll take one little spot in Minnesota and it'll spread. And just like Minnesota was the only state that voted for Walter Mondale in 1984, we can flip that around and make your county or your city the only red or yellow in the entire sea of blue. And once you do that, once you've got a foothold, we're storming the beach. That becomes our operational warhead, and we move from there outward. And we will spread. Liberty will spread. We'll ignite the remnant. If anybody knows the story of the remnant, if you don't,
I do.
Read it. The remnant will come to life. And all we have to do is just breathe a little bit of life into it. And we're here to help you do that. And the fact that you're buying into Defend the Guard and love it so much, it tells me that we have a beachhead. We have a foothold. And now we just need to multiply it.
Oh,
I'm excited.
we're not.
Hell yeah,
We're not. I can't speak for the libertarians, but I could speak for TC and his platform, his show. I'm not going away. And anybody who hasn't paid attention to me over the last 4 years, I gave up a 13-year career for my show. So if they think that I'm just going to go away because they don't want to talk, no, I'll like. If I'm not afraid to tackle people at literally at the state level or my own former employer, they're nuts. We will put these people on blast, not in a aggressive way, but we're going to have these hard conversations. I am going to show up. I am going to go to the House, into the Senate, and I'm going to talk to these folks. I'm not going to just send emails. I'm going to show up and we're going to talk. And you're going to give me answers. You're going to tell me yes or no right now. Well, wait, open up the legislation. It's right there. It takes, 5 minutes tops if you're a slow reader to read this. And all you need to do is get to the first line. Just get to the first line. It's literally the first line. It should be all you need. It's all you need. Tell me why you can't support this. You can't tell me why? Okay, we'll be putting this out publicly. I'm like, I'll tell people, check, you hear, will not support, can't say why. And then I don't care if you lose. I don't care if you lose because you're no good to us when you win.
I'll tell you, my mentor, the man that taught me how to win in confrontational politics, came to Idaho in 1979 to run my grandfather's failed state senate campaign. And my grandfather was running on a very unpopular platform called Right to Work. It's an anti-union, you should be able to work without having to be forced to pay union dues. And Idaho was a big union state. And my mentor came here to Idaho. I was 4 years old. And my father was the steward of the Idaho Electrical Workers Union. And my grandfather was running on a Right to Work platform. You want to talk about tension? My grandfather,
Wow.
my dad,
Yeah.
my grandfather's campaign director would circle the room staring at each other at Thanksgiving and Christmas and birthdays, never saying a word because grandma wouldn't allow politics in the house. But they would stare at each other. And my dad was a big, burly union guy, and he'd fight at the drop of a hat. He was ready to swing. And Gary, my mentor, went to work on my dad by teaching him principles of the Constitution and freedom and liberty. And over a couple of year time, my grandfather lost by 16 votes, best loss of our family history. But Gary stayed in Idaho because he met a young lady and got married. But he over time baptized my dad in liberty. And my dad eventually left the union, started his own shop, and became the co-chairman of the Idaho Right to Work Committee and forced right to work through the legislature. It took him 8 years to do it, and they had to remove 26 sitting legislators to do it. But my dad has a barn with all their scalps on the side of it hanging up, and he's got 26 of them those are his trophies. And he had to remove friends and foes that got in the way of liberty. And when you recognize that the price of freedom does come at the price of somebody's scalp, and you're willing to take that scalp, things change. And they change in an awful hurry. Good legislation takes time, but liberty does not want to incubate forever. Liberty wants to hatch, and it wants to do it right now. And so when you're willing to start growing that trophy room of yours, good grief, get out of the way, because there's nothing more powerful than a motivated liberty activist.
Speaking of a powerful, motivated liberty activist, you have one, like, well, screen top right above you. You two are supposed to get connected so that you can record. So that you can record that speech.
We're going to do it, Rebecca. And I apologize. Yesterday, like I said, and I'm not going to get too emotional about this, but Friday, my dog came inside with a sore ribs, and I thought maybe he got kicked by somebody, and we took him to the ER, and they kept him overnight, and they pumped him full of some antibiotics and tried to make him better. The next day he was worse. And we took him to a trauma center. And Monday we found out he had necrotizing fasciitis, which is flesh-eating disease.
Yeah.
And he died today. He was my companion dog, my PTSD companion. And I'm struggling to hold it all together. So that's why Rebecca and I have missed our recording session, but we will get there. We will get it done. But my dog, Mr. Johnny Cash, rest his soul, he was my absolute best friend in the world. And had that not happened, Rebecca and I would have already recorded, and that message would be played across the world right now.
I agree that.
I think it's a legitimate reason to hold off.
Yeah, like I'm a dog lover. Like now I want to go hug my dog. Thanks. Now I'm going to cry.
Yeah,
I cry
No
about
doubt.
dogs, man.
I don't like to share a lot of that publicly, but if you follow me on Twitter, it was happening in real time, and I was just trying to share happy thoughts of my dog, just to put it out to the universe, because I'm a firm believer that the universe will deliver the right thing, and we just don't know what the right thing is. And I don't know if the universe is a spooky guy in the clouds that wears a white robe, or if it's a real true God, or if it's Jesus Christ, or if it's a force that we don't recognize. I don't know what that is. But my belief in whatever spirit is out there will always deliver the right thing for us. We just have to be willing to, have our hearts open to it, and be willing to accept whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well,
I dig your attitude, man.
I'll take your mind off of that for a little bit. You have no idea on Sunday when you met Rebecca and I came alive when you messaged us on Sunday in our group text. So I was giggling like a schoolgirl. I'm like, when you made the mic drop comment, because I didn't even realize I mic dropped, by the way.
Dude, bro. You could have heard cricket. I mean, the crickets actually stopped, right? When you mic dropped, I was like, yes. It was wonderful, brilliant.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it and see that, because what this didn't show is that I was sitting in a like a bench kind of behind the scenes, like having to calm myself down, because I knew, obviously what I was gonna go and say, and I wasn't sure until I was actually saying it if I was gonna be able to say it, so So I wasn't listening. I didn't hear any of the rally. That like everything in my head was just like, okay, you're calm, you're good, we're gonna do this, And then so I'm gonna have to go back and watch that.
Well, Rebecca, you were the only one I sat down for because I told you I was going to sit there and stare at you the whole time. So, but that's your speech
Fire.
was fire, and I didn't know how I was going to close. I knew I was going to bring up the Soldier's Creed. I knew I was going to do that. But I didn't know how I was going to close, and I wasn't even like looking for that mic drop moment. I was just, so when you said, dude, that was fire. I was like, yes, Dan liked it. Like I had some hero worship going on there. Like, Dan liked it. Yeah, I've succeeded. I can die now.
I was walking around the grocery store, listening to it on my AirPod. It was maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. I was just struggling with the whole dog thing, and I just couldn't sleep. So I went to buy grapes. Believe it or not, I have this thing about eating grapes in the middle of the night, and I'm listening to it. And the grocery store is empty except for all the shelf stockers. And I'm like yelling. I'm like every time I hear a point, I'm like yes. And I would stop it and rewind it, and I would voice text it to myself so I'd remember it. And so I'm saying the lines that you're saying into a text. And the shelf people that were stocking the shelves were looking at me like I was crazy, and it was just a surreal moment. And I texted Diego and Hunter both in the middle of the night. Hunter doesn't sleep, first of all. And Diego, he wakes up at the smallest little noise, he wakes up. That's a gift from Uncle Sam in the war. And I'm texting him, telling him, you guys have to watch this. You have to watch it. Check this out. Go to 52 minutes. Go to 57 minutes. And I'm just sending them link after link after link after link. And finally, Diego's like, bro, we'll talk about it in the morning. I was just like, okay. So, but
I could just hear Diego too, because he's like trying to sleep, just exhausted. Because I think he works about 25 hours a day.
I tell him that he gets to work half days, any 12 hours he wants. So yeah, he is tireless. He's a machine. And we're a 3-man wrecking crew. It's just Diego, Hunter, myself, and then I've got a couple of people in Arizona who I like to leave them behind the scenes. They're more of advisors, and they kind of help us steer through some of the political mess. But the 3 of us, I have Diego and Hunter on full-time staff, and then myself, I do this when I'm not running my own companies and doing my own thing. But just imagine if the 3 of us can get to where we're at. Imagine if we had 30 of us, or 60, or 100, or imagine, oh my God, for just a minute, if we had the same kind of a budget that Americans for Prosperity had with that Koch brother money. They put $50 million behind Nikki Haley.
Yeah.
What could we do if we had that kind of money? First of all, the organization would be corrupt, because that kind of money corrupts everybody. But if we had a tenth, if we had a 100th of that budget, you guys would be blown away if you knew that our entire organization runs on less than $100,000 a year, and that comes from private small donations. Full-time salaries, travel, printing, advertising. You know what costs us? It costs us about $12,000 every time we send an email, because of how many people are on our list. Email is expensive. You can't just use Gmail, because they limit you to 25 recipients, I think, something like that. So you have to use these email servers, otherwise it goes into people's spam. And so our organization runs on a shoestring budget. And if we doubled our budget and doubled our numbers, I can't even think what would happen. But if we quadrupled it, or even hit that AFP money, first of all, I'd hire somebody to do what I do, because I'm not very good at what I do. I'm a great coach. I coach high school football. I've coached for 20 years. I know how to go in the locker room when we're getting our butts kicked and motivate people to go out there and try harder, even though we're going to get our butts kicked, right? That's all I really know how to do, is just fight and keep fighting and keep fighting. And it's because of good people like you that join the fight that we actually have successes. And it's going to happen. We are within 12 months from today, mark my words, we will have passed in a state. Mark my words, put it down today. It happened on your podcast. And we're going to do it with people like you. And I can't thank you enough for joining the fight.
So between the varied groups, we want to do the training. So I've heard you have to have a minimum of 25 people to make it worth the trip.
I always say 30 because if you say 30, 25 will show up, right? So you put 30 people in a room that have registered, and here's the rule. We will help. We actually monitor the registration page. We'll actually set it up just so we don't get someone that fibs, that doesn't say, oh, we've got 60 people and we show up and there's him and his mom. It's happened. We want there to be 40 or 30 people that sign up, and we want them to pay $40 to come. None of it comes to us. That pays for food, for lunch, pays for the room, the facilities, and anything else that you might need if you have to pay for internet at the facility. Now, if you have a free facility, we can decrease that number dramatically. But we pay for lunch, snacks, coffee, everything, and whatever's left out of that $40 goes to whoever's hosting the organization, the meeting. So if it's the LP that's hosting it, the rest of it goes to you. We don't take one red cent from that thing. And so if you can put 30 people that commit $40 in 8 hours, we will fly out there on our dime and we will train 8 solid hours of some of the most intense political leadership training you can imagine. And when you leave, you feel like you've been drinking out of a fire hose all day. And we will then be there to support. We look for the star. There's always one in a group that grasps onto what we teach and they just go out and do it. And we find that one person and we stand next to them and buttress them and support them and help them with their cause. And that's our commitment.
How much lead time? How much lead time do you guys need for that?
It depends on the time of year. If it's during legislative season, I'm going to ask you to postpone it, right? Because most states, our legislative season is January to mid-April, and we're so busy during that time in all the different state fights that we just can't do it. So if it's after that time, if it's from mid-April through the end of the year, you give us 6-8 weeks lead time, we'll make it happen. We've done it on less, but our schedules are pretty full. But if our schedule's open and you give us a week and you've got the commitment, we'll be there. But statistically speaking, through history and all the examples, 4 to 6 weeks is about as fast as we've seen it done right. And because it takes reminder emails, it takes a trickle campaign. You've got to remind them they got to be there. Someone's got to be there to get the donuts and the coffee. It takes a little bit of planning to be done right. And I can tell you a well-run training is better. Let me rephrase this. I'm sorry. No training is better than a poorly run training, because you don't want to bring people to a training that's not effective.
That makes sense.
Because it turns them off. And when we show up and when Sean, myself, and Diego come into a room, Tony Robbins doesn't hold a candle to us. I'm just telling you, big old banana fingers can't compete. So.
Well, I already reached out to everybody that I need to talk to get it up off the ground. And so we're kind of thinking mid-June because we have our convention in April.
Can't
and
wait.
Then we have petitioning for the presidential race and the Senate race that has to happen. And that's mid-May to the beginning of June.
Okay.
And then after that, I think that, and then we'll use those kind of events to really be able to to advertise for this and to help get interest and bring people in. And so we're already kind of.
I was just picking a date today, like today, tomorrow, sometime in the near future. Get the date established right now. So when you're talking about this thing, it's not a concept; it's a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
Because if it's real, people will really be in focus. And when you get their emails and they agree that they want to sign up, we'll help you with a trickle campaign that reminds them. And we'll send them success stories over the next couple of weeks of people that have attended our class and things that they've done from our class to make Liberty grow. And it just keeps it fresh. It keeps them motivated. They'll get video messages from me and from Diego, and we'll do our best to make sure that they are locked in. And if there's a conflicting child's baseball game or a soccer game, that they've already got plans to miss it, and they've already apologized to their child in advance. I don't want any surprises, but we want to make sure people show up to the training.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's something that we could really, I don't know. There's just, so anyways, I was thinking about when you're talking about, being all in, and this is the kind of stuff so on our way home after the rally, because I live up in northern Minnesota and that was down the city. So I had a close to a 4.5 hour drive that evening back home, and we'd made the trip that morning and we were driving back home. Anyways, so my friend was sitting in the seat next to us, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were talking about the rally and all this a whole bunch of other things. But he was like, I've noticed that the people who are doing well, like after having an experience like Iraq, are the ones that are, using that to, like what I was doing. And I was like, the thing that I needed to really be able to get over what had happened, because I didn't even, you guys heard what I said, but I didn't talk about the worst stories. Like this is, so there's just a lot in that's, big. And that if you think too much on it, it can pull you down. And the way that you figure out how to deal with that is by doing something positive with that energy and turning around and using it for a force of good. And once you've realized that that has to be the outlet, there is no going back. You can't, like, if I were ever to be able to even like win like a seat like Amy Klobuchar sitting in, if somebody was like, hey, we want to pay you this amount of money, I'm like, nope. I mean, it's too late. Like it's too late. You guys, every single one of you in DC, I can't help but view you as the enemy. You guys are the reason why I'm here, to take you down. And that's it. That's my only purpose. If I don't ever do anything but that, I will have lived a good life.
Well, that's admirable. And I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but my state rep was out with cancer treatment a couple of weeks ago, and I got to sit in the legislature on his behalf. I was an actual sworn-in legislator in the state of Idaho, and I was pushing for Defend the Guard while I was there. I was actually voting and debating on the floor other bills. It was like political fantasy camp. I was like the LARPiest of all LARPers, right? And one of them, a couple of the more establishment Republicans came up to me afterwards, and they said, "Well, Dan, we understand what you're saying about Defend the Guard, but what is it that you really truly want?" And I was actually shocked. I didn't know what to say, and I looked him square in the face, and I said, "Jason," yeah, I called him by his first name instead of representative, but I go, "Jason, what I want is a restoration of war powers and nothing less." And then I just turned around and walked away. I didn't know what else to say. I wasn't there to make a deal. I wasn't there to trade my soul for Monsanto beans. I wasn't there to, I was there for one thing. And so once you realize that, the end game becomes pretty easy. If you go to a baseball game, I've never seen anybody try to score a touchdown before, ever, right? You're at a baseball game. You're there to score a run, right? You don't go to, it's just, once you understand the purpose of the game and what your end goal is,
Right.
There's no questions.
Sorry,
I don't know what else to say other than thank you for, TJ's on the East Coast, by the way, right now, so he's probably got to get to bed. But
I'm only an hour ahead. He's fine. You're fine.
Yeah, I'm all right.
But I can't, for summing up what happened on Saturday, I was saying this when everything was cutting out, and I stand by it. So many of the people that spoke, especially the vets of the combat of the last 20 years, have so much more to offer, and I'm humbled to even be in their company and to be included in this movement. And that includes you, Dan. I've been a fan from afar for a long time, and when I say fan, I don't mean it in a like, oh, I gotta get his autograph, but it's just I've been watching you, and you've been motivating me for a long time, and because I felt so alone for so long, like I just disenfranchised from a party that I thought I belonged in, disenfranchised from the idea that like true patriotism is not being for every single war they want us to fight. Being for the military and being for the vets doesn't mean you get behind all of those causes. It means you actually want to bring them home and protect them from all those losses. And so when I became aware of you and had the opportunity to meet Diego and have him on my show and get to know him and see how he interacts with people, like it's a genuine relationship. It said a lot to me about who you guys are, and it motivated me to want to be involved and stay involved. And from my end, from my account, in We need you. And so don't ever, people jump on me for selling myself short. And you've sold yourself short a couple of times tonight. And you probably don't even realize you're doing it, but this movement would not exist without you. And Saturday would not have happened if it weren't for you. Even though you weren't there physically, you were there. Your presence was felt. And I thank you for what you've done. And you have a friend and an ally in me going forward for anything that you need. Well, not money, I'm poor, but you have a friend and an ally in me, and I will do anything I can to, further the cause. Like I said, even taking time off from work at my own expense, I'll do it. It's worth it to me. I want to see an end to all of this blood and death.
Amazing. It's amazing. TC, you're one of the G's, man. When we know we've got somebody that's drank the Kool-Aid, we will keep feeding it to you. And our Kool-Aid, though it doesn't come with some overly sugared flavor water, our Kool-Aid is the cup of liberty. And I promise you that we're not going anywhere. Diego and Hunter are the two of the best lieutenants you could ever imagine. And I wish I had 100 of them. I wish I had 100 of people like you. So thank you. Your words mean a lot to me, although they're very humbling and embarrassing, because I do have self-deprecating humor, because I come from, I like to joke that my dad was a union electrician and my mom used to manage a 7-Eleven. And so I didn't come from a silver spoon. And
Nope.
So I'm proud of what we've done, but I'm not done fighting. I can promise you that. So thank you. Your words mean more than I can tell you.
Yeah, so we are at the end of our time for this, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. Honestly, this has been good, and any amount of having an outlet for being able to talk about this more. The anti-war movement is the entire reason why I joined being the Libertarian Party. So I recognized very early on that nobody else was going to stand by their principles by that. And, that's why I'm here. It always, for me, it always goes back to Iraq. Everything does, everything. So, I don't know any last words. I don't know what else to say this evening, but.
Hey, thanks for coming,
TJ,
Dan.
of course, you bet. You bet. I feel like we didn't get to hear enough from TJ. So next time we do this, all spotlight TJ.
Oh,
yeah, for sure.
Soaking it in, man. I really dig it. I really do appreciate it. And I really think it's just like Rebecca said, this is my number one motivation. And I'm looking forward to getting in that state house to defend the guard, man.
In which district are you in?
44B, Minnesota House.
All right.
44B.
So is Drazkowski and is it Leisky and Matthews and Barr, are they all still on board? I mean, we literally haven't heard a peep from them in a minute.
Well, we're going to find.
That's a great question.
We're going to find out real damn soon.
What happened to Mort? Where did Mort go?
He lost his re-election bid. So.
Yeah.
Well, Nathan, if you go to www.defendtheguard.us and click on Minnesota, you'll see Nathan is at the top of the list of our sponsors. Right below him is that petition that says "Join Us." It's just the petition's not there. I don't know where it went. I'll make sure.
Well, I just signed up for the bring our troops home and all that stuff. I was doing all that before we got on the show, and definitely I'm in.
I've already sent the legislation to a few members of the House and the Senate to read, and annoyingly tagged many of them on Twitter.
Well, we have I don't know if you've got it or not, but we've got the legislative packet once you find someone that shows an inkling of interest and you've vetted them and you know that they're not someone working for the other side, we've got a legislative packet that you can give to them. It's presented, it's bound, it's beautiful, and it's got everything they can imagine that they would need, including written testimony from an adjutant general that opposes our bill, the response that we helped write in response to his letter. We've got the model legislation. We've got articles. We've got Paul Gosar from Congress talking about how Congress controls the purse strings and how he'll never allow a state to be defunded. We've got a letter from the Kansas Adjutant General saying there would be no fiscal impact on the state. That's the quiet part out loud that we got them to admit to, and we've got it in print now. When you find the sponsor, we will send the material that you need to give them. And then when you find someone that's willing to actually stand up on the floor, I'll do everything. We will write floor speeches for them. Literally, I will write and email it directly to them, and they can read them on the floor to make their point. Because you know this, any politician is their own worst enemy, and they will always, always, always say the wrong thing. And it's not their fault. They're just dumb. You know, TJ, you're not yet because you're not elected, so you still have your soul. But politicians will always do the wrong thing.
It's just like talking to cops.
Exactly. And so when someone commits to us, we commit.
You're smart.
What's that?
Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than open your mouth and confirm the rule.
And remove all doubt. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for having me on.
Well, Dan,
I can't thank you enough.
Thanks for making time.
You bet. And then Rebecca, we'll connect and we'll record your message tomorrow if you're interested.
I have time tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay, I will send you an email with the link in a couple of times that I'm available, and you can pick.
Okay, for sure.
Awesome.
What do you use for your recording service?
Say that again.
What do you use to do your recording service like that?
Oh, you're talking to great grandpa here. I use whatever that is. I don't know. Stuff. I don't know. I have the guy that built you guys know what redacted news is? Do you guys ever watch redacted news on YouTube?
Yeah.
It's one of the best alternative news sources. The guy that built their studio built mine.
Okay.
And so
Nice.
I'm just now learning how to use it. I have no idea. I use
No, I was just wondering what you like. Do you use StreamYard, Restream?
No, it's called eCam. It's an Apple-based product, and I used to use StreamYard, but we sometimes had a difficulty with getting microphones to connect. So eCam seems to be working better, and I can do like 4 different camera views at the same time. So it's kind of cool. But that's
Well,
I was hoping I could get the recording of it and put it out on my channel too. That was I was gonna hone in on it, but
you mean live at the same time?
Or even just record it. But anyway, we could hash that out behind the scenes.
Yeah,
Dan,
I'll send you. I can send you a WeTransfer, and I'll give you the whole raw thing, and you can cut it up as you want it. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't have a show. I don't have a
awesome.
I record things so we can use it for social, for newsletters, for whatever, and then I let candidates for office come in and record anything they want, as long as it's liberty based.
Nice.
So, yeah. All right, guys.
Yeah.
Rebecca, I'll send you that email here in a few minutes.
Point out if you want to join the party, lpmn.org. Membership is top right in the page. And we have our state convention coming up April 19th, 20th, and 21st, which Dan is actually going to be there also. And so is TC. So, and TJ. Actually, all of us are going to be there.
All of us.
So, well, I guess we'll see you guys in a month.
All right, my friends. Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Bye.